I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing us your story, the awesome tips on how to grow on YouTube, how to battle kind of the fears that people are having, with posting videos on YouTube. And it was just an awesome conversation. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And my name is Kyler Miles. I'm the host of the Making It Happen podcast. Why don't you just take the opportunity to introduce yourself? I'm already recording, so if you want to introduce yourself, and then I have a few questions prepared, but really, man, super unscripted, and I just want to have a conversation and just learn more about what you do. So give us a little taste on who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so my name's Sidd. I'm a content creator as of the last little bit. My story kind of started. I'm 34 years old. My parents are from India, and they immigrated here back in the 70s, and they kind of lived the so-called American dream or Canadian dream, as you would say. And, it was easier back then. You go to college, you get a degree, you have a family, and you can live off one salary. And in 2004, I started my degree in engineering in Alberta, and I almost got kicked out of school after the first year. I didn't take my studies seriously. And, I grew up in a small town in rural Alberta, and I was the valedictorian. But then when you go to a bigger city, you're with the cream of the crop. Everybody who's there is just as smart as you, if not smarter. Mm-hmm. And I almost got kicked out, but then I straightened out my act. I graduated, thankfully, 5 years later. And I worked most of my life as a project manager on major infrastructure projects. And I loved it because as an engineer, you work in big teams. You have to deal with the public. You're dealing with technical specialists. And you get to work on these cool projects. But it wasn't until 2 or 3 years into my career, I started to apply for, moving up the corporate ladder. And I just was having trouble with it. I hate doing job interviews. I felt like it was just sort of insincere, and it's kind of all fake and that kind of stuff. And you're really relying on people who may be not smarter than you or just as smart to really dictate your life. They're going to make a decision that can impact your entire career. And a lot of my peers were getting promoted over me. And I was like, I got to start a side hustle. But it was never intended to become my full-time job. I started as a dating coach, actually. Back in
nice.
I met my wife online. I'd worked with a dating coach and in 2012. And I realized okay, I was good at writing because I'd written a lot when I was younger. And I started helping guys write dating profiles. And I did seminars and we did all that stuff. And you made a little bit of side cash, but it was hard to listen to people's problems. And, a lot of them were self-inflicted, and I just couldn't deal with that. So I started YouTube. And YouTube is tricky because you have to find the right niche. YouTube's really crowded. And it wasn't until 2017, the place where I was working went through a major reorg, major restructuring. It felt like they were firing people every day or every week, and they'd send out emails to everybody. And I had never experienced that level of anxiety in my life ever. Panic attacks and that kind of stuff. And
fearful for your job kind of thing.
Yeah, just fearful for my job. And I wish I could go back in time and tell myself, you're totally capable. You're good at what you do. You have nothing to worry about. But I was young, and, I was early in my career. A lot of my boss left, and good coworkers who I'd worked with had just left the organization. And I was like, I'm done with this. I am going to put all my effort into just dictating my own path. I was it was almost kind of like a middle finger to the system, not my job, but just the system of how corporate life works. And I started a YouTube channel, and it was originally a Guns N' Roses channel. And it blew up to 50,000 subs, but you kind of plateau. And it wasn't until a month before my daughter was born in 2019, I started Rock and Roll True Stories, which is pretty much my full-time gig almost. I still have my day job, but that blew up beyond belief. I had no idea it was going to blow up to what it did today. I mean, within 2 years, we're at 225,000 subs, which is mind-blowing.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was after 2017, it was the first time in my life I would actually go into work and never have anxiety, and just almost have a rock and roll attitude. You know what? I'm really confident in myself, and I know I'm totally capable. I didn't fear anything. But I had my coworkers who I'd see were stressed out. They were fearful for their jobs. And I just didn't have that attitude. I finally had the freedom in my life to be I've got something to fall back on that I love and I'm passionate about. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
took a lot of precedence in my life. Like that was my focus, that and my family. And a lot of that was made possible because like I have an amazing wife who's like super supportive, and she's in marketing, so she's kind of different than engineering, but she's got a really good like long-term vision and very structured in what she does. Yeah.
Yeah. Sid, your story, although it's very unique to you, is there's a lot of similarities. I've interviewed maybe 30 to 50 guests, and I hear this a lot that what they followed their interests, and it wasn't had no intention, no monetization plan, no strategy. Just I want to do this. You were feeling stressed, you weren't sure what's going to happen, and you just fell into this kind of interest and just like I just need to do something more, and it ended up being it blowing up because you're talented, because you're interested in it and you're passionate, and thus you put work into it, right? And now you're sitting here that you could easily fall back to this career, this YouTube career.
It's crazy. Like I basically, when I look at it, I'm like, I make videos for a living almost. And it's just like the craziest thing. Cause I went to school for 4 years. Like it was or 5 years. It was the hardest school I'd ever done in my career. But it's kind of weird too, when you're going through anxiety in life, you almost feel like you're the only one going through it. Like nobody knew what I was dealing with in my personal life at that time of work, except my boss who I talked to. But as my channel grew and my side business grew, I started to like realize like a lot of my coworkers were going on stress leave. They were dealing with the same stuff I was, if not worse. And it kind of was like, wow, there's something really wrong here. Like if people are feeling this way, like you should not be going to work and feeling that about your career. And I was like, I'm really glad that I have this to fall back on, because a lot of people aren't lucky enough to have that in their life.
Yeah. I never went to engineering school, but I did get a diploma in sales and marketing. And I thought graduating, I would be a salesman. The part-time jobs I had when I was in high school, moving into college, were all around selling stuff. And I thought that would be my career. And for 5 years that was. But when I look back and how I woke up and how I looked at Monday mornings was like the worst thing. I'm now excited to get to work on that project. There's not everything is perfect in my life, but I would say majority of it, I am happy to be creating content. Like I'm happy to be doing the thing that I love. And I see that in you as well. I see that you are happy doing this. And that's at least for me, my definition of success. And what I try to instill in other people is that to find that passion, find that interest, right? Because it's so easy for it to snowball into something much, much bigger. And similar to your story, like I did lose my job. Like I wasn't fearful. I moved to Montreal. I got laid off along with 100 other people. And I was in a province that I didn't speak the first language, and I'm still learning it.
Yeah, it's difficult.
And you're right. And like I had a little bit of a safety net, a little bit of savings, but not much, right? I couldn't survive for more than 3 months. So I had to get a job, but I just pursued a passion of mine. Like, I applied for dozens and dozens of jobs. And it's funny that the only one that really called me was the one that I was passionate about.
Yeah. And I think it comes through in like whenever you're applying for jobs or whatever it may be. Like right now, excuse me. I mean, I still have my day job, and we went through a round of layoffs. There's going to be more layoffs this year. And if this was me like 4 years ago, I would probably be a lot more stressed out before I start my channel. But now I'm almost like, just tell me if I'm going to be laid off and I can pursue my real passion. I mean, I still do the best job I can in my job, but nothing stresses me out anymore about it. It's like, I'm really confident in what I know. And it's probably because, as you get work 10 years in your career, you're more seasoned, you've kind of seen everything. So nothing kind of surprises you. But the reason I still have my day job is because I feel like the most important part for me, at least, is having that social interaction. When you're a YouTube content creator, in terms of like the stuff I do, you don't really get that. It's kind of like you're working just by yourself or with a team that you're maybe briefly talk to, but that's about it. And that's the hardest part. But the only thing that stresses me out about YouTube is like, there's so many good ideas I have in my head and my subscribers have that I just don't, I'll probably be dead by the time I even get to all the ideas. So, it's just every morning I wake up and I'm like, oh, what can I do today on my channel or something? It's really, it's awesome to feel that way about, your career and your passion.
Yeah. Is there going to be a point where, that you make the decision to make and go full time into YouTube?
Um, it's hard to say. Like, I don't really have a crystal ball, but I mean, where I am now in my career, I've been working for 11, 12 years. I still enjoy it. I'm still learning because I do like I've changed jobs in the last couple of years, and I wanted to really be well rounded. For me, it's important in my career that I'm still well rounded and I'm still using my degree. But I mean, my wife and I were talking about, I said, maybe I could go into work one day when I'm like 45 and be like, I'm done. And I just like walk out. Like, who knows? Maybe I film it and put it on YouTube. But no, I mean, I'm still enjoying my job. So I don't know. It's also harder. Like when my daughter's we have a 2-year-old daughter, and when she grows up and starts going to school, or when COVID's over, like maybe we want to go live somewhere else. So maybe that's when I'll make the transition. But there's still a lot of balls up in the air. We're still like, thinking about
Yeah.
stuff.
But the important thing is I'm hearing from you is you're still interested in your job, right? Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was kind of in a denial state that this is what I was meant to do. But when I look back, it really wasn't. Like, there are aspects of the job I really liked. Like if anyone listening or watching, if you've made a sale before, it feels amazing, right? But that high is for 5 minutes, and you have a whole quarter to work up to that high, right? So it's a grind for sure.
Oh yeah, like it's so funny. Like I don't really tell the people I work with like that I have a YouTube channel. You're totally allowed to, but I just like it's like this personal thing that you kind of have off to the side that's really fun and entertaining. But it's funny when I would go into my office before, because I'm working from home now, people would tell me what they think YouTube is like. Like they'd be like, "Oh, I know this kid. He reviews toys." I would just want to have that life where I put out one video and become a millionaire. And it's like, no, YouTube is a grind. Like you have to be driven in order to
Yeah.
succeed. You got to always be creating. And that's why people have burnout on YouTube as well. Like I've had burnout on YouTube, and that's why I'm not doing as many videos, but it's like a really delicate balance. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's something that you really have to take a deep look
Yeah.
at. Not as easy as
There,
nothing. People only look at the end goal. They never look at the hard work that it took to get there.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
And there was a survey I saw, and I'll link the survey below because I'm going to butcher the stats, but this is what it basically said. It said they did a survey of about 100,000 people, of YouTube creators, people who had channels and posted videos on their channels, and it was around the 100,000 mark, right? And almost 50% of them stopped after 1 month of their YouTube channel. Almost half of them just completely stop. And then there were stats around like 3 months, a year, and then that number slowly went up to like 70%, right? But the under 1 year, almost 70% of YouTubers bailed, right?
Yeah.
And it's a tough platform. So do you have any advice for people who want that content creator life, that YouTube life, and they are passionate about it? Do you have any tips you can give them if they're starting out on YouTube?
I think the best tip I have is like we were talking about passions. Like the first thing you really got to ask yourself is what are you passionate about? For me, it was rock and roll and music. And then the second thing is like how occupied is that space in YouTube? So like go look on YouTube and see how many people are doing that topic. So maybe it's photography for some, or coaching for others. And then I try, for me, there wasn't a lot of people telling the same kind of stories that I was doing. And if there are people in your niche, I mean, you could always just see what are they doing good and where could they improve, and that's like an opportunity for you to kind of slide in and like fill that gap. So I think
Mm,
those two things, like what are you passionate about and what is your competition doing, and then you can use like keyword research tools, like to see what's the volume of searches that people are doing for that
yeah.
particular topic. Ours is pretty generic. We do rock and roll, so our stories go from 60s to like I grew up during the 90s, so like mostly up to the 90s, late early 2000s. And
Mhm.
I found, I think, a good niche for like 80s to 2000s stories. Like that seems to be the most popular stuff on our channel. Anything that's too new, people are like, no, I don't want to
Yeah.
hear it too much. Yeah.
Okay. And did you have any like sort of fears or insecurities when you're starting your YouTube journey? Because I know that's a
Oh yeah.
very common, and I've experienced this, and it
Yeah.
still am experiencing this. But have you experienced like self-doubt or
Oh yeah.
fearful?
That's totally normal part of life in general, right? Like when I started my rock and roll true stories channel, it was I just put it up there, and if you watch some of my early videos, they were terrible. Like I was living in a different place, and I didn't have like a studio to record in, and it sounded like a fishbowl. and I made tons of mistakes. I still sometimes make mistakes to this day. My audience tells me that. And then, the video was terrible. Like it was just like one standard clip. Now it's like more cinematic, my stories. And I, even today, like when I put up videos, I still get a little nervous. Like, oh, how are people going to like it? And is it going to take off? Yeah. And then I sometimes wonder, like, where am I going to be a year from now? Am I going to run out of stories to tell? Like those kinds of insecurities come up. And my wife and I were talking about like getting more people on board to join the team. So, somebody who's like doing creative stuff now compared to engineering, it's like a completely new area for me. So it's like a little nerve wracking. So those are the kinds of fears that I have, which I'm sure a lot of creators have. Like as you grow up, as your channel grows, you then start dealing with business stuff, which I don't care much for. I just want to create. But then you start getting, lawyers and accountants involved and people to do research for you because you just can't do it all yourself. So those kinds of things create a little bit of anxiety. It's like, it almost gets too big. Like the best thing I could tell people is like, there's no book on how to deal with sometimes like getting that successful sometimes overnight. Like you just have to kind of deal with it and see what happens. Right?
Yeah, that was my next question. Like, how do you overcome this fear, right? Like, how do you tackle it, right? Because you're still posting, so you are dealing with it, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is I sometimes have to just stop and reflect and be like, just, be present and like just remember there's not a lot of anybody who I know in my personal life, like you're doing something extraordinary that most average people aren't, and you should just be lucky that you're enjoying the ride. And I was just, when I was after the horrible stuff in 2017 happened, I always just remind myself, things will work out, we'll figure it out. And I used to always tell myself that as a project manager, go to these meetings on these complicated projects, and I'd always be like, we'll figure it out, things will work out, and they always did. So it's just like sometimes you gotta slow down and just like take stock of what you're doing right now. And I find like meditating definitely helps.
I think like project managers are probably the best people to talk to about dealing with like when shit hits the fan, when things, because it doesn't matter what project, it always happens, like,
things always go wrong. Even simple projects that I've worked on, they become more complicated than they should. But it's just like projects are like life, right? Things never go according to plan, and you have to be prepared, and you have to be able to change, to adjust whatever the situation is.
So going back to maybe sharing some advice to people who want to learn about YouTube, because I'm sure that's going to be a part of this title or a part of the description of this episode. Something you wrote about in your bio is the importance of knowing your niche. And we hear it a lot, right? Knowing your niche, know your niche. And a lot of people don't know what they want for breakfast, let alone what their niche should be. That was me this morning. Do you have any kind of advice for finding out what your niche should be? You said research, what is the topics going on right now, like interests, but also the topics. Is there anything else you can maybe share about finding a proper niche?
Yeah, I mean, another thing I would do, like in addition to asking yourself what you're passionate about, and then also seeing what your competition's doing, is actually looking at the comments. Like one thing that we do on our channel is we involve our audience a lot in the content that gets created. We have like a Google sheet that people can fill out and tell us exactly what they want to see on the channel. So like looking at that data, it can help us narrow down, like there's themes, like people request the same stories or bands, and we can say we'll tailor our content towards that. But if you're starting out on YouTube, a lot of it too comes from like just looking at comments, right? Like I've noticed on a lot of YouTubers channels, they'd be like, oh, you should do this, or I wish you would do this, or can you cover this topic? And it's like you can get ideas just from harvesting the comments, and you can be like, oh, maybe like there's something there. Like for me, I follow a lot of like men's fashion channels, and like I see tons of those guys get millions of subs. There's tons of comments there, and you can take those comments and be like, oh, there's something I can maybe do, or maybe that's something that this person's not doing on their channel. So for us, once you get big enough on your channel, then you can just like, we automated it, so it's just so much easier to harvest ideas and really show our audience that we like actually listen to them.
Is there any like beginner mistakes that you made? If you're going to go back in time and, tell yourself, younger Sidd, don't do this, what would you say?
Oh God, there's like so many mistakes I made. I'm as imperfect as they come, but I would probably say that, first of all, like record in like an actual studio space. One thing we did a year into our channel is we worked with a YouTube coach. So he gave us a lot of advice that I wish I would have known when we started, like recording in like a place where there's not a lot of echo, using stock footage, that kind of stuff. We upgraded our editing software. So I wish I would have learned some of the fancier editing software much early on, because I literally was using I was using iMovie early on. And, you can get by with iMovie. You don't need to have the fanciest software. But I wish I would have learned that really early on. And I wish I would have probably been a little more thorough in like reviewing my scripts, because I made tons of mistakes. I still make the occasional mistake here and there, but I was just trying to see if there was an audience. And luckily I found there was, but then those old videos stay up, so we're trying to redo some of our old content to like make up for the fact that the quality wasn't very good. So I wish it was like better quality, better audio, and just I wish I would have learned some skills earlier on, like using more advanced software. Those were probably the most important things.
I find that like when people ask me, because I am a content creator, I create like for the business I work for, I manage their podcast, but then all the different types of video content. So I always say audio is first. Like audio is the number one thing, because people can forgive visuals, because they can listen, and there's video podcasts that have no titles, no fancy transitions like this. Well, I will edit out some things, but 95% of it is just us talking, and that can do very, very well. You don't need the fancy transitions. But the audio is very, very important, and investing in any equipment versus camera, it would be a really, really good microphone. Or I use for the video that you were talking about earlier that I just posted, I actually recorded that on my phone in my closet. Yeah, because at the time, like I was just replacing my microphone. So I didn't have a proper podcast mic. And this is my backup mic that I'm using right now. And so I saw a YouTube video, like how to get good audio without the equipment. And they suggested your iPhone and in your closet. And I did it. First take that's how it sounded. A little bit of tweaking, but it was really, really good.
It's funny you mentioned, like I'm literally sitting in my closet right now, and this is where I record all my audio. And it's tiny, but it works. And then now that I remember, when I started my channel, I was literally using you remember that video game Rock Band and Guitar Hero?
Love that game.
That's how I got into rock. That's how I really got deeper into rock and roll music, and kind of rediscovered it. I had one of those mics that I was using in my living room, which was just like the most echoey living room ever. And then I went and bought like a Blue Yeti mic with the pop filter on it, and that's what I used to record all my stuff. So that's what the coach, had said, that you should use like your audio is first and foremost. And then when I go back, look at my old comments, people like your audio the levels are jumping really loud in some spots or too low. So over the years, I've learned like to use compressor effects and that kind of stuff to level out the audio. I wish I would have known that when I started. Yeah.
And perfection too is you'll never achieve it. Right. And it's so common. I did this too. Like it's very easy when you start like YouTube, and I'm not at the level you're at all, but just looking at the amount of videos I've seen on YouTube and how much thousands of dollars it could cost you to invest in the fancy camera, the audio equipment, the lighting, the ND filters. I mean, it can really, really put pressure on your bank account. And to your point, to know like what your needs are, and then get the equipment that fits those needs versus like, I'm going to get everything and that will make me good, right? Because you have to develop your pitch, develop your style, either on camera and audio before at least I believe you make it to that next step.
Yeah, like when we after our first year, we had went and talked about like what do we do going forward? We want to improve our quality, and we thought about building like a full home studio and going crazy and like having like these crazy backgrounds with like cool rock and roll photos and a lava lamp and all that stuff. And yeah, we looked at cameras and audio equipment, and it was like kind of astounding how expensive it was. But then it was also going to take longer to do the same types of videos. And we were like, well, we can go down that route, or we can just use stock footage and stuff like that mixed in with some other stuff. So I'm glad we did take that route, but you can go crazy on YouTube in terms of how much you want to spend on stuff. Yeah, it's crazy.
I'm looking at that right now, like, looking at, revamping my studio. If you're watching this, you see my bed's in the back, right? And it's something fancy. It does the great job, but that's an interest of mine. Like I love watching desk setups and how people manage to do, you know what I mean? But to your point, you have to be, it's not that it's needed, but it definitely does help, right? Quality of production can help, but it doesn't make the video.
Yeah, it's like a nice thing to have. Like a lot of YouTubers that I watch, they have like just the perfect backgrounds and backdrops. So when we started looking for like zebra printed like sofas and just some velvet sofas, all this crazy stuff, and I'm like, this is getting crazy. Like, are people really gonna sit through this? And there's probably YouTubers who do it much better than me. So we just said, we're just gonna do better editing, and we're just gonna put more into the audio and the storytelling, and let it speak for itself. And I think it was the right decision, but who knows, maybe down the road we'll do the odd video that way.
Yeah. You brought up storytelling, and that is one of the questions I had prepared for you, and how important it is in your videos. Like, can you walk us through your process for storytelling and on YouTube?
Yeah, like with my storytelling, I'll give you an example. I guess if anybody's watching this, they'll probably figure out like what bands are coming. Like we're doing one on the band Candlebox. They were like big in the 90s. They were one of these Seattle bands that they came around the time of grunge, but they were accused of like ripping off all those bands. So I wanted to, that was a really early video I had done, but it was like I said, crap quality. I wanted to update it and add more info. So when we look at a topic like that, I really want to focus more specifically on the period when they're like when they were the most famous and how they got there. And rather than just rehashing what people already know, there's some really, my favorite thing is to find old magazines from like 1993 or 1994 and actually read some of those articles. There's some stuff that's so great that you will never find on anybody else's website, just by having like old Rolling Stones or old Billboard magazines or Spin magazines. And that's kind of where we start. And then we start looking at like the early days of the band and how did they get, what happened behind the scenes with the record labels to like get them to where they are. That's a lot of things people don't know. And that's what makes our, videos unique. So we really focus on that period for really any band story we're telling is like that famous period, how they get there. And then how did it fall apart? And, we kind of just go from there. It kind of follows like a similar format. So the beginning of the video is like a teaser for like, this is what we're going to talk about today. And it's kind of cliffhanger. Then the intro comes, then we start about the story of like the band, like Candlebox. So one thing I've tried to do is that I want to make longer videos, almost like short documentaries. So before I was doing like 5 to 7 minutes, this one maybe end up being 16 to 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
But yeah, the storytelling, I mean, to write a script like that, it can take, like I'm already on I'm finished the first week of it and I'm still writing it. So I usually have 5 or 6 scripts going at once, and I just kind of toggle between based on what I'm feeling during the day. Like, you being a creative person, that you got to be in that zone. Like if you're not feeling it, it's like, I just walk away and I'll just come back to it when I feel it. Like I've had scripts for like sit for like 6 months and I just don't finish them until like, I'm ready. Or sometimes you try, sometimes it's hard with storytelling because some bands I want to do or stories, but there's just not enough meat there. Or it's not interesting enough. It's sometimes difficult, but my fans my subscribers have some great ideas. Like a lot of our content we put up now is just suggestions that they propose to me, some of which I've never even heard before these stories. So
do they propose like bands to review? I'm sure, right? They probably give you thoughts around that.
Not so much like reviewing bands, but they're like, oh, there's this cool story about, one that we're doing next week is the metal band Slayer. But then when they came up, there was like another Slayer. So there's like 2 Slayers that were out at the same time. One was in Texas and one was in LA. And it was a crazy story. They played together on the same bill, but they had like this legal battle over the name. I had never known that story until somebody suggested it through our feedback form. So I went and read the whole story and just wrote the script, and it's coming out next week. And I always make a point of telling our fans, like, next week is fan week. This was a suggestion. This is why we're putting it out. And people have given
Mm-hmm.
us really good feedback. So yeah, we don't do really too many reviews. And I try to be impartial on my channel. I just want to be there as like a medium to tell the story. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I see my purpose as. I don't feel as comfortable on the camera. That's why we have like visuals and stuff. So
Mm-hmm. And would you say like that's to knowing yourself, like having being self-aware that where your skill might be versus where your skill
yeah.
might not be?
Yeah, like I don't think I'm the best guy to be reviewing music and giving my opinion on it. I feel like music, especially, it's just like politics or religion. It's like very divisive. Like even on my channel, some bands are so divisive. Like
Mm-hmm.
I know anytime I'm going to upload a video from a certain band, there's going to be some people who love it and there's some people who hate that band. But
Yeah.
they'll make it known. But it's like that's just part of it, right? To me, at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, it's not so much about the bands. It's just about whether there's an interesting story to tell or not. Some bands I want to do, but it's maybe not an interesting story to tell.
Does that like does that ever fear you yet like, that your fans won't like the band that or the video you're about to
Oh yeah.
post, right? And does that prevent you from posting
No,
or
no, every video that I put up, like going forward, I always am proud of that video. Like even if it doesn't do well, or maybe it's a band that's not well known, I can be like, well, I still did that. And I learned something about that band too. So a lot of the times when I'm writing scripts, I'm learning stuff as I'm writing it.
Mhm.
But it doesn't scare me. Like I never go like, oh, I'm not going to do this video. There may be some, where you start getting into like, certain topics. Cause YouTube is the problem with YouTube is that censorship has been a huge problem. So certain
Mhm.
topics like YouTube will like censor certain videos or they'll, demonetize certain videos because you say one word. And it's like you put all those hours into work and then you kind of get screwed over,
Yeah.
which that is not a fun thing to deal with. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's the only thing that kind of like dictates whether I want to pursue doing a topic or I have to like censor myself when I'm writing the script. That kind of sucks. Yeah.
Does that make you want to go off the platform ever? Like, let's say you
Yeah.
brought up like mini documentaries. Like, would you ever consider being the director for a Netflix series, if you get up there?
Oh man, that would be cool, but it would. There's definitely other platforms besides YouTube. Like Rumble is a big one that's come up recently, which I know a lot of creators are flocking to. At least on the political side.
Hmm.
So I'm exploring whether I want to go to Rumble. But it's just like you've only got so much time during the day to like test stuff out. So
Hmm.
maybe in the future, but right now, I mean, YouTube's been good to me, and I still want to keep. That's where most of my audience is, so I still want to keep creating there. But it's definitely in the back of my mind. Yeah, like I
Yeah.
want to. Like, how about yourself? Like, because I know you're on YouTube. Have you ever thought about like going off the platform and trying something else?
The one thing I'm trying right now, YouTube is my primary focus, but TikTok has been huge to growing across kind of like the different networks.
Yeah.
I was on Clubhouse earlier today, which is another new app that I'm
Yeah, I
trying
actually got
out.
introduced to it last week, which I didn't even know what Clubhouse was until last
It,
week.
it's honestly it's really really cool, but there was a room specifically for content creators considering TikTok, and I'm on the platform, but I was doing fun videos with my girlfriend, like not taking it seriously, and I learned there's like a bunch of talented young videographers, photographers blowing up, and they are literally within a few short videos, a few short weeks blowing up, and it's cross the platforms, right? Now people are following them on Instagram, on
Oh
YouTube, on
wow.
Twitter. And so TikTok has been just an amazing resource. So that's the only platform I'm really considering putting more effort into right now because like you said, it's hard to grow on YouTube. Like you can be very, very talented, and it's a long-term play because YouTube is a search engine. I believe it's still the king of all platforms next to Google. Google's number one, YouTube's number two for searching content and figuring out your answers. But for bringing awareness, like TikTok has just been huge. Like I had a 500,000
Oh
viewed
wow.
video of my girlfriend and I, nothing to do with what I do. It was just like a trend, and we do fun things, and I think people like to see that, right? So yeah, that's the only platform I'm really considering at the moment.
Because yeah, we started really pushing Instagram this year, And to me, I didn't have any idea how to even use Instagram, but TikTok is something we're exploring, like we maybe want to do in the near future. But yeah, I mean, I think Instagram's definitely brought more awareness to our channel. And I think a lot of what we do on Instagram, we do like short little teasers for like the videos that are out on YouTube. So maybe who knows, maybe there'll be like a good thing to use on TikTok as well.
Yeah. Honestly, I try my best to be on as much as I can. Of course, I'm just not as skillful like Twitter. I'm not, I'm better at speaking than I am writing. Like I know that for me to flesh out an idea, I press the record button, I like dump everything, and either I'll go back, review and write it, or I will actually edit out and then just pick the good stuff and then I'll reshoot or just keep it like that. Like I get inspired and I just like dump all my ideas out. And that's always been kind of my creative process. And I don't think it's the most efficient process at all, but it seems to be what's working for me.
Yeah, it's funny. Like we have Twitter and Facebook, but I don't really use them because I just don't feel like they're the best platforms for what we're doing. That may
Yeah.
change in the future, but I find like as a project manager, when it comes to my job, I'm super organized. I'm super on top of stuff. I feel like with the YouTube, it's like it's almost like laissez-faire. It's like it's not as organized. It's like I wish I was a little more. That's where my wife comes in. She's like the chief operating officer and deals with like the day-to-day stuff, and she's way more organized than I am. Like
Yeah.
not when it comes, I just want to create and like leave me alone. And I've always been
Yeah.
like that. Even when I was a PM, like I never wanted people to, I never worked well under micromanagers. I want people to give me a project and say, run with it. And that's how I
Yeah.
learn. And then I just need people there if I'm asking, you need to ask questions or I need some guidance. But
Yeah.
that's the nice thing about YouTube is that you're not answerable to anybody except yourself and in a way your subscribers and your fans. But I found like that's kind of like a mutually beneficial relationship. Like they're getting content, but you're also having like a social interaction.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes back to self-awareness. Know yourself. I think I talk about this a lot on the podcast and with guests or solo episodes, how knowing yourself and knowing where you're strongest and like double downing on it. Like if you are strong on video or if you're a better writer, my girlfriend, she has a hard time with video, but she's an amazing, amazing writer. And I say like, write out your scripts and maybe the video will be easier for you because you're not searching for your words, you're reading what you already thought of, right? And it's just knowing yourself.
Yeah. And that was the other thing. Like when I started, the other thing I would tell myself when I was starting out is like, I had no training or any kind of experience doing voice recording. So I would read a script like I wouldn't read it like an actual narrator. It sounded so horrible when I would read it, but now I put pauses in. I kind of try to be, I'm not the most emotional person, but I try to do my best at it. But yeah, my wife's the same. Like she doesn't really enjoy video editing, but she's an amazing writer. And
Mm-hmm.
she writes some scripts for me. Like I could never write that good. Like,
Yeah.
and even some
I
of my
think you and I are
some,
similar in that way.
yeah,
Like
even
my
if
girlfriend
someone,
will write it too.
some of my subscribers tell me you're like that's not good English or something, and I'm like you're watching a rock and roll video. Like I don't think people are coming here for English, but yeah, I mean English was my weakest spot even though I was born here. When it came to like school and stuff, so yeah. But I did want to also say another thing that's really helpful with having YouTubers grow, and one thing I've kind of learned recently is to not only engage with your subscribers, but engage with other people who are in the same niche. So
Mm.
it's weird when I follow certain YouTubers in the music niche, I'll comment on videos, and then people, because our name's Rock and Roll True Stories, it's tantalizing enough that people will click on it and they'll like, we
Mm-hmm.
pick up a lot of subscribers that way. Doing stories on YouTube is huge too. Like we pick up a lot of subs just doing stories.
Yeah, I
And
haven't got into that yet. Like, are you talking about the YouTube Shorts, or are you talking about
yeah,
like actual stories on the app?
well, I think it's only on the app. I don't think you can access it on the desktop as far as I know, but you can just do like a 15-second story. And that gets us a lot of subs because they send you the data on your subs. And like that gets you like a couple hundred subs just by posting those. So those are
Wow.
great. But yeah, by engaging with other creators, it's kind of funny now. People are like, oh my God, I never thought I'd see you comment on one of these videos, or we love your videos or something like that. Or maybe
Yeah.
people who've never heard of you will discover your channel.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been good too, but like you don't want to spam people's channel, but like just like have something to contribute to that social discussion too.
If you have
Um,
nothing to say, you don't
yeah,
have to say something. But to your point, like, yeah, you're bridging a connection, and whether they click on it and then love what you do or don't, you're at least opening the doors to opportunity.
Yeah, and one of my favorite YouTubers is a guy named Rick Beato. He's like a music, he's a record producer, but he also like his knowledge of music theory is astounding. But he has some really cool videos of just him talking, and he was talking about like how a lot of '90s bands died when the millennium happened. So I just said, you know, oh man, I love some of those bands. And it's yeah, it seems like they disappeared after the millennium. And then I had like a bunch of people like reply back to me, and I interact with them. So I think that the other thing that's really important, and my dad kind of taught me this too when I was younger, is that like no matter how successful you get in life or how big you get, like you should always try to make time to chat and be social with everybody. And that was one of the skills that I feel like being an engineer that a lot of engineers don't have is those soft skills. Is like I remember, and this is advice to everybody who's watching, is and this will probably help them in their career and their personal life. When I used to work in my office, we used to have this underground parkade where there used to be like parking guys, and I used to know the names of every parking guy who worked there, and I'd chat with them every day. I know they tell me their family life, they tell me about what they were doing, and I can guarantee you nobody I worked with ever knew the names of any of those people, because I made time every day when I was exiting the parkade to chat with them, and they'd always light up when they saw me. And it's not because just because I chatted with them. Doing simple stuff like that, or talking to people at Starbucks or wherever you're going in your day and being social, it makes you a much better conversationalist. And it also shows like, you know, you're memorable and you're a bit different. That's going to help you in your career, those soft skills. Like, if you ever watch like the TV show The Office, like Michael Scott, maybe you know, what do you ever think of him as a boss, but he's a great salesman because he can connect with people, especially with his clients, that a lot of the salesmen that you see can't, you know. So that was the most valuable thing I think my dad taught me. And I always interact with my fans. Like I'm always replying to comments when I can. So I'm not this person who's like a big YouTuber who's not having time for the fans. So I try to interact as much as I can with them.
Sidd, I think that's a great way to kind of end us off. But before we go, why don't you let us know, let the audience either watching or listening know how they can connect with you, where you want to direct them to. Just let us know how we can best follow you and support you.
Yeah, so you can just literally Google search Rock and Roll True Stories or go on YouTube, and we should be like the first thing that pops up. And yeah, we just tell interesting stories, like specific stories about rock and roll, about albums, bands, incidents, feuds, controversies, all that interesting stuff from like the 60s all the way to like now. But if you're somebody who grew up during like the 80s and 90s, I think you'll definitely find something to like on our channel if you're into rock music.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sidd, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing us your story, the awesome tips on how to grow on YouTube, how to battle kind of the fears that people are having, you know, with posting videos on YouTube. And it was just an awesome conversation. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And thank you guys for listening or watching. Please follow, subscribe, both Sidd and myself. And my name is Kyler Miles. I'm the host of the Making It Happen podcast. Thank you guys so much. Take care.